特にヒーローでもヒロインも出ないスーパーガールも出ないね、そういうしかも日本のごく普通のその風景を舞台にした映画はエンターテインメントとして成立しないと思われてた時代ですから、その着想をしてから作るまでに15年ぐらいかかっています。
A movie without any major conflict, villains, or even a traditional structure can be a hard sell. It goes against a lot of the established rules that are followed by most filmmakers. But Hayao Miyazaki and his team at Studio Ghibli provided proof enough that it can be done, and done remarkably well to boot. After working on a number of TV shows and movies set in or inspired by Europe, Miyazaki and fellow co-founder of Studio Ghibli, Isao Takahata, eventually had the desire to instead try making films set in Japan. So, the two went on to make their own Japan-oriented movies, which were both released in 1988. Takahata wrote and directed the movie Grave of the Fireflies, while Miyazaki wrote and directed My Neighbor Totoro. Western affectation was the reason provided by Ghibli co-founder and producer Toshio Suzuki as to why the two filmmakers didn't want to tell stories set in Japan prior to their 1988 films. After the Second World War ended, Japanese pride had greatly diminished, so children growing up in Japan at this time, like Miyazaki and Takahata, looked to Western countries to admire instead of their own. For obvious reasons, they didn't want to turn to America, so instead began showing a preference for Europe. One of the things Miyazaki hated about Japan was its ever-spreading urbanization, because the country's wildlife was one of the only things he loved about it. So seeing the natural beauty of his country getting destroyed only furthered his distaste of it. But during the process of making My Neighbor Totoro, Miyazaki rediscovered his love for the landscapes of Japan that had become lost to urbanization, as well as the ones that still existed.
僕は日本って国嫌いでしたから、その自分の子供時代に対する手紙として日本の風景がもっと美しいっていうことを。
In his own words, Miyazaki wanted Totoro to be a heartwarming feature film that would not only entertain and touch its viewers, but stay with them long after they have seen it, as well as have the spirit of the film, endear lovers to each other, inspire parents to fondly recall their childhood, and encourage kids to roam around temple grounds or climb trees. Miyazaki wanted to create a sense of wonder, discovery, and the kind of pure joy that only children usually feel, all surrounded by Japan's beautiful countryside. All things he considered to have been largely forgotten, ignored, or lost in his country, but made My Neighbor Totoro with the belief that these things still existed. The movie follows sisters Satsuki and Mei Kusakabe as they move to the countryside to be closer to their hospitalized mother. We follow the sisters as they explore their new home, meet supernatural creatures like soot sprites and forest spirits, and just live their lives. My Neighbor Totoro is characterized by its lack of conflict as a slice-of-life feature in the purest sense. There aren't any villains, no world-ending problems to be solved, or anything of the sort. The closest the movie gets to having conflict is at the end, when Mei and Satsuki think that their mom's illness could be getting worse, and when Mei subsequently goes missing trying to get to the hospital her mom's at on her own. It's the only time in the movie when you think something bad might actually happen, but worry quickly turns to relief when Satsuki is able to find her sister, and they reveal their mom is going to be okay. The movie then returns to its more jovial nature for its last few minutes. Rather than focusing on a big problem the characters have to solve, the movie instead spends a decent chunk of its runtime following Satsuki and Mei as they explore the new environment. Exploration itself is given a lot of emphasis in the movie. As we closely follow the two sisters, it's clear that we're meant to see the world through their eyes. We feel the same sense of wonder and excitement in exploring and discovering new things that they do. Even the more mundane moments of exploration, like when the sisters are checking out their new house, or when Mei is on her own, running around outside constantly getting distracted, are treated with a childlike sense of fascination and adventure. And when you bring in the benevolent forest spirits like the Totoros and the cat bus, those childlike feelings of wide-eyed wonder and excitement only get heightened. The giant tree scene and the one that follows, for example, are injected with so much joyful energy it's hard to watch without feeling happy. And on top of the visuals, Joe Hisaishi's score does a lot in these scenes and the movie as a whole to help communicate the exact emotions the filmmakers want us to feel. All of these scenes of exploration and adventure burst with the same limitless energy and delight that the movie's protagonists seem to have. Outside of this though, the film provides a more down-to-earth, relaxed atmosphere. My Neighbor Totoro contains a pretty loose structure unlike most Hollywood movies in order to maintain its lighthearted and mostly conflict-free nature. A staple of Miyazaki's work involved moments in his movies described by film critic Roger Ebert as gratuitous motion, or sections where a character will sit and write, or watch something that catches their eye, or just get some work done. The purpose of these moments are not to advance the story, but only to give the sense of time and place and who these characters are. In an interview between Ebert and Miyazaki, after Ebert shared his appreciation for these moments in his movies, Miyazaki responded by telling him that it's called ma, emptiness. It's there intentionally. To provide an example, he clapped a few times and explained that the time in between claps is what ma is. Miyazaki includes these moments in between the action in all of his movies to slow things down a bit. It helps the characters feel more real, and like Ebert said, informs us on who they are. It feels like My Neighbor Totoro in particular contains more scenes with ma than a lot of other Ghibli movies. Its slice-of-life nature and minimal conflict lends itself to having quite a few scenes where we see a lot of the moments in between claps. Probably the most iconic scene in the movie, when Satsuki and Mei are waiting for their dad at a bus stop with Totoro, is mostly just them standing next to each other. It's these moments of inaction where the characters simply exist that capture the nature of the film. These characters live in a world where there doesn't have to be any heroes because there aren't any villains, a world devoid of any major problems or dangers that they're able to freely explore, befriend forest spirits, and live carefree. Another subversion the movie makes from most mainstream storytelling comes from its titular character and the other creatures it surrounds itself with. Unlike how you'd likely expect a person to react to finding out their house may be haunted, Satsuki and Mei's father responds to the idea with nothing but excitement. And shortly after, we discover he was safe to react that way because the spirits residing in their house were these mostly harmless things called soot sprites. While the girls may have held a little more apprehension towards the idea of their house being haunted than their dad did, it doesn't take them long before they realize there wasn't anything to fear. These soot sprites, as well as the Totoros and the cat bus, are all peaceful spirits, perfectly in line with this near-ideal version of the world the movie presents us. Adding to the theme of childhood innocence, these spirits, according to the granny character, only make themselves visible to children. Making it so only Satsuki and Mei can see them ties their benevolent nature to the innocence of children. These spirits even personify the idea of nature that the movie has. They're peaceful and warm and inviting, but can only be admired by those that are willing to show an honest appreciation towards them. I mentioned the movie Grave of the Fireflies earlier, and I think it'd be interesting to briefly take a look at its relationship to My Neighbor Totoro. Outside of the obvious connections that they're both Ghibli movies made and released at the same time, and that both take place in Japan, the two movies weirdly complement each other in that they essentially act as two sides of the same coin. My Neighbor Totoro is about the purity, joy, and adventure found in childhood, while Grave of the Fireflies is about the effects war has on children. In it, we follow two children who are also siblings as they struggle to survive during World War II. They're exposed to horrors and treatment no one, especially children, should ever have to experience, which deprives them of the innocence they should have had. That's not to say there aren't any happier moments in the movie, but moments is the key word here. It's impossible for these respites of joy to last when the crushing weight of death looms over every moment. The fact that we get to see the two siblings have fun at all really makes the tragic parts that much more devastating, because we know moments like this can never happen again. It's unfair and cruel, and unfortunately very real. Grave of the Fireflies shows us what happens when the kind of purity and adventurous spirit present in My Neighbor Totoro is robbed from a child. What made these movies the fitting double feature they were on release is that both of them, while depicting vastly different experiences, are seen through the eyes of children. With My Neighbor Totoro, Miyazaki crafted a film equal parts exciting and calming. It's a heartwarming movie that encapsulates the purity and adventurous spirit of childhood. And at its core, it encourages its viewers to explore and discover new things around them, as well as rediscover old ones. Totoro can bring adults back to old feelings of the joy and excitement of childhood. It reminds children to go out and have fun, and in the process of making the film, even Miyazaki rediscovered his love for the beautiful landscapes of his home. My Neighbor Totoro isn't just about two girls running around and having fun with the fantastical creatures they meet. It's also about finding what's lost,